Hi guys, so you caught me drinking a beer here? Well, it is that weird time between Christmas and New Year, so I hope all of you guys are having a great Christmas. So I think it's time to do a new video series before I upload my Space Invader end of year Christmas wish list. So this is going to be a short two-part series where we're going to be focusing on privacy focused search engines. Now today we're going to be exploring 4get, which is a light open source proxy search engine that basically just strips away ads and tracking parameters that gives us a much more private and streamlined searching experience. So what makes 4get different to other self-hosted search engines? Well, unlike meta search engines, which basically pull results from many sources, 4get lets us pick a single search engine such as Google, DuckDuckGo, and many others, and it acts as a privacy enhancing kind of bridge, and it still relies on the chosen search engine's indexing, but it helps keep our searches a lot cleaner. It strips away the ads and strips away all of the tracking, and we can even customize things by category like web, video, images and music depending on what we need. Then in part 2 we're going to move on and install SearXNG, which is a meta search engine that aggregates results from lots of different sources. Now this can provide us a much broader coverage of the web, whereas 4get just focuses on a single search engine per search, just removing the ads and clutter. Now a problem that neither of these actually address is when we're actually running them self-hosted at home, well, our IP is always associated with the search. So in today's demonstration we're going to be installing 4get on our Unraid server, then integrating it with Tailscale, which will not only allow us to actually access it from anywhere in the world, so if we've got Tailscale on our laptop we can use our own search engine, but we're also going to exit its traffic through Gluten VPN. Now you may have seen in my last video we set up Gluten VPN with Tailscale, so we're going to use that as an exit node and then have all of the searches go out through a VPN IP, so nothing will be tied to our home IP address. Now before anyone asks, despite the name, 4get has no confirmed connection to 4chan. Now any similarity, it probably stems from the developer's style or tone in his documentation. Sometimes it's pretty harsh, but there's no official link. Anyway, ready to see how it all works? Let's dive in and get 4get set up on the Unraid server, integrate it with Tailscale. So by the end of the video, we're going to have a flexible private search tool ready for everyday use. So I'm going to go across over onto the other server and let's get started. Okay, so let's get started and install 4get. Okay, so here I am on the main server, but this server is off sometimes, so I think what I'm going to do actually is install this on the server in the data center. This is on 24 hours a day, and obviously I don't have to pay for the electric, so it makes sense that I install it here. So the first thing to do is let's just install the container. So let's click onto the apps tab here and do a search for 4get. Okay, so let's now click on install to install the template, and then we can pull down the container. Now unfortunately, as I'm making this video, how the template's actually set out at the moment, it doesn't actually fully work correctly. But it's really easy to actually fix and get everything working. So what I think I'll do is the first thing I'll do is just pull down the container as it is and show you what happens and why. Then we can make the changes, fix everything up and get it working. Okay, so with the container installed, we can see here if we start the container, well basically it just doesn't start. So let's have a look at the logs and see what's happening. Okay, there's a slight change of plan and I'm going to switch gears slightly. Now whilst making this video and installing 4get, initially I used the existing template by ImTy to install this and get all of this working. And I want to thank ImTy for taking the time to make the template and share it with the community. Now that being said, whilst making this video, I actually decided to make my own template for 4get. Now this is for a number of reasons. The first reason is basically because I wanted to use the official image of 4get, because recently there have been some updates and now SoundCloud searches have been fixed, which is a fairly recent update. So by using the official image, it ensures we get the most up-to-date version as and when they come out. Now secondly, the template was using host networking along with port 80, which for most people would cause a clash with Unraid because Unraid's web GUI runs on port 80 as well. And finally, because this video is going to be leaning heavily into Tailscale integration with 4get, I designed this template with mappings to be compatible with Tailscale, so we don't have to do any advanced configurations in Tailscale, it will just work straight out the box. Now I want to be really clear that this isn't meant to be a criticism of the original template or its author. I deeply respect and appreciate the work that ImTy put in to bring his original template to us, the Unraid community. I'm just hoping that my alternative template makes this video a bit easier to follow along with and basically just helps the community as a whole. Okay, so it's a few hours later and my template should have propagated onto community applications. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this one here and also remove the image. But also, one thing to do when we remove containers is always best to remove its app data as well. So I'm going to click onto shares here, go to app data, and then just remove the original 4get folder from my app data. Now also, I'm going to go back to the Docker page here, and I'm just going to remove the original template for 4get. So to do that, I'm just going to click add container here. I know that sounds a bit weird. And I'm going to select 4get. So this is the original template. And I'm going to click this little button here to delete it. That way, Unraid's not going to get confused as to what template's what. Okay, so now let's go on to the Apps tab here. And we can see we've got a lovely Happy New Year message from Andrew, aka Squid. And a very Happy New Year to you, Squid, and to all of you guys, all of the Unraid community. So, I think I've forgotten what I'm meant to be searching for. Really bad joke, I know. So let's do a search for 4get. And now we can see my template here. So I'm going to click on to install. Now really, there's nothing you actually have to fill in here at all. For you more advanced users who might want to do more things, well, there's various hidden settings beneath, but we don't really need to set up any of those at all. So let's just pull down a container as it is and just have a look at it. And then we'll come back and integrate it into Tailscale. But for now, let's just have a quick look at what everything's all about. Okay, so we can see 4get, it's all installed. Now, just one interesting thing is if we click to the advanced view here, we can see the container uses very, very little resources. It's only using 12 megs, so very efficient. Okay, so let's click onto it and go to the web UI. And here we can see we're straight into 4get. And we can see here it says proxy search because, well, this is a proxy search engine. So I'm just going to type in, I don't know, hello, and let's do a search. We can see that's really fast results. And we can see here, these are the various results that we've got from the search. Now, currently, here you can see that I'm using the scraper DuckDuckGo. Now, obviously, we can change this here. We can change the default not to be DuckDuckGo. Or for individual searches, we can just come here and we can change the scraper from all of these different search providers. Now, at the moment, you can see DuckDuckGo here. Next to it, we've got this drop down for country and it says all regions. So basically DuckDuckGo is searching all regions for our search results here. Now I could put it here just to be, say, I don't know, maybe Colombia. And then if I do a search here, now I'm getting search results from DuckDuckGo just filtered through the country of Colombia. And obviously we can see here all of the results, or most of them anyway, they're in Spanish. Now, if I swap across here to Google, we can scrape search results from Google. Now, this is going to reset the country. So let's click on to Google. We can see now it says instances country. Now, instances country is not necessarily the country that you're actually doing the search from. Because this is a proxy search engine, well, it's stripping out the stuff from my browser. The instances country is going to be probably based off the IP address of where the server running 4get is actually coming from. So like I said earlier, mine is in a data center in Finland. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that server here and I've got my Firefox container running. It's not going through the VPN, so it will be using the data center's IP. So let's open this up and let's do a search here for hello. So this should give us some sort of comparison between a regular Google search and a filtered one through 4get. So we can see it's quite a lot different. The first thing here is exactly the same from Hello Magazine, but it stripped out all of the other stuff that was above it. And also if we look here, we don't have all of this kind of stuff at the side here. And just looking on the first page, well, our search here is a lot more useful in my opinion. So it's worth mentioning that if we actually run this through a VPN, which we are going to do later on, then the instance's country is going to be related to the VPN exit point that we actually use. Now you might be thinking, well, you like some of the things here, some of the search results that you get using a regular Google search. Well, what we can do is we can actually click on here, like images, videos, news and music. So if I click on to say images here are the images, but it's actually from DuckDuckGo. We can change that to Google. Now again, all of these defaults can be changed. So now if I click onto videos here, the default scraper it's going to use for videos is YouTube, which I'd say probably 99% of videos online, well, they're normally YouTube videos. So let's do a random search for, I don't know, Space Invader 1, hey? And so there I can see a whole bunch of my videos. Now you don't have to use YouTube as the scraper. We could use one of these as well. But also we can actually filter by time posted, anything up to the last year. And the type, we can have video, channel, playlist or movie. And duration, we can have whether it's a short video or a long one. So I'm going to filter these out to longer than 20 minutes. I'm sure probably most of my videos are going to be that. Features, whether it's live, 4K, that kind of thing. And relevance, we can actually have it by things such as view count. So I'll be interested to see which has the highest views. So it seems like this is the most popular video that I've ever had. In fact, I'm actually going to be remaking this for Windows 10 and Windows 11 VMs, both regular and gaming VMs, especially now Unraid 7's come out where we've got much more features and we can make much better VMs than we ever have been in the past. So I'm now going to actually change this to Star Wars. And for video type, I'm going to click onto movie and let's just see what YouTube has to offer with that. Okay, so we've got some sort of teaser here, the Old Republic teaser trailer from the 31st of October 24. Okay, so I actually had to pause making the video to actually watch that. It seems like it's a fan-made AI interpretation of this. It looks pretty cool. But anyway, let's get back to what we're doing. So now let's click onto the news tab here. And this is going to give us news about Star Wars. And sadly, it looks like one of the Star Wars actors has died. Looks like maybe today. That's very sad. Now with news, we can look at time posted, and with DuckDuckGo as the scraper, everything up to the past month. So if I switch to Google, we've got a little bit more what we can actually search with. So here I'm going to search for Star Wars news, and I'm going to search it for things that are older. So let's put that in 2005 maybe. And I'm going to choose news older than the 31st of December 2005. So let's click search and see what we get. Okay, so here we got some very old Star Wars news from the Knights of the Old Republic game through to a Star Wars review of Revenge of the Sith from the 19th of May 2005. And so finally we can search for music. And the music searches we get, well, they're from SoundCloud. Okay, so I think that brings us where we can actually go here onto the settings tab here, and we can actually change the default settings for what 4get actually uses. So first thing to look at is the general setting here we've got for NSFW. This stands for not safe for work. So it's allowing not safe for work content. That by default is set to yes. Set to no if you don't want to have any type of explicit searches be able to show up, or yes if you just want to have it as the default. Now theme here, I'm going to change the theme. I'm going to change this, I think, to White Christmas. Yeah, it's just past Christmas, but it's not quite New Year. So I'm going to click update settings here. And here we got a nice Christmas theme. So underneath here with the scrapers to use, we can choose our default scrapers that we want to have 4get to be able to use. So for instance, if you're happy with web searches being DuckDuckGo, but you'd rather have a Google image search, well, you could change the images to be Google here. Then that will mean that the default is Google, but we can still actually change it from the drop down whilst on the page. So I'm going to click update settings here. And now let's go back and do some searching. So this time, I don't know, let's search for cars. And the scraper we're using is DuckDuckGo. But if I click onto images now, we can see the default scraper for images, well, that's now on Google. But again, like I said before, we could change that back to DuckDuckGo. So what we did really here is just set the defaults that we want to be able to have used. Okay, so here at the top, we've got this one here that's disabled. And what this is basically like an autocomplete right at the beginning of the search. We can choose this to be auto, Brave, DuckDuckGo, etc. or any of these. We'll get an autocomplete whilst we type a search. Personally, I like to keep it disabled, but I know a lot of people do like to have a predictive search. So if I change this to be Google here and click to update settings, then we go back here to our search page. Now if I start typing cars, we can see here that we're getting some predictive searches from Google, but if I click on to search, it's still using the default scraper that we had set. And if I go onto images, it's still using Google because that's what we changed it to earlier. So one more thing, I think if we click onto the home button here, we can actually change the banner that we see here. So let's do that now. So to change the banner, we're going to have to go back to the server here and then go to the app data share and then go into the forget app data. And here we got a folder called banner. So we want to go inside of here, and here we can upload various banners for our forget. So we could actually design our own and pop them in here. They have to be ping files, or an easy way if you want to just have some various different ones. If you head across to forget.ca/instances here, there's a list of various other servers. Now the easiest ones to go to is ones where bot protection are disabled. So for instance, if I go to the one at the top here, we can see there's a different banner here. And if I click onto it, it's changing to some various other banners. So what I can do is I can actually download one. And if I go across to another one, I think this banner is quite nice here. So I'm going to download this. And now if we go back across to the server and we click on upload, here are the two that I just downloaded. So I'm going to upload these. So now going back, if we refresh the page, well, we can see my banner's changed. And if we click on it a couple of times, it will keep changing to different random ones. So we can fill the whole directory if we want and have different random ones, or we could just keep one in there, the one that we want to always have there. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of actually looking at Forget and how it works. Now let's add some extra functionality to it. Now there are a few problems with self-hosted search engines. And one of those is, well, how do we access it when we're not on our home network? It's all very well and good having our own search engine, but if we can only access it when we're home, well, that's not ideal. And another problem with self-hosted search engines is if we're running them at home, well, all of the searches are still going to be done through your own IP address. So this probably means that your IP address for searches, well, they could be tracked. You know, it's not really much of a big deal, but if we want to be 100% private, we really need to route all of our searches through a VPN. And also another thing is maybe I want to give access to other people to be able to access the search engine. We don't really want to be exposing it to the public internet, because then anyone can just hammer away at this, and it's really not a secure thing to do running on your home server. So obviously running Tailscale is going to fix a lot of these issues. We're going to be able to access it from anywhere we want, and we're going to be able to give access to other people as well. Now we can actually run a container and use an exit node and route its internet traffic through an exit node on our tailnet. And we can see here that this container here is an exit node. That container being the gluten VPN container here. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. So let's install Tailscale. So let's click onto the container and go to edit and have a look at the template. All we need to do is just toggle the use Tailscale onto on, and we need to give the Tailscale host a name, so I'm going to call it Forget. Now we don't want this to be an exit node, so we're going to leave that as no. We actually want it to use an exit node. So if your Unraid server is also on the same tailnet, when we click on exit node, it's going to show the exit nodes on your tailnet. So I'm going to use the VPN container here. Now I'm actually not on this container, I'm not going to use serve. Now that's because forget it seems to bind onto port 443 even when HTTPS isn't enabled in the container. And this is a little bit of a problem when using Tailscale Serve. Now we could toggle across to the advanced settings here and set the port to a different port number, maybe 444, but the problem with doing this is then the actual address has to have :444 on the end. So I think really let's just leave serve off. We don't really need SSL anyway because this is all on our Tailscale network and so everything's encrypted, so it's not really a big deal. So I'm going to leave serve turned off and I'm going to click apply, click onto view container log, and we can see here that Tailscale's been installed. Now sometimes you'll see the link at the bottom and sometimes you'll see it above. This time it's above here for me, so I'm going to click on the icon here to authenticate this into my Tailnet. So to allow this container access, I'm just going to click on to connect, and here we can see forget is now on my Tailnet. And remember, its internet is being routed out through this exit node here. Okay, so now it's authenticated, we can minimize this, and let's close the log and click on to done. Now we can see that both these containers are using Tailscale. So now if I click onto this and I click Tailscale Web UI, I'm straight into the container. And let's do a search here. I'm going to search for cars, and here we are straight into the search. And here we've got images, videos, news, and music. So everything's working fine. I can access this from anywhere just using this Tailscale IP, and also if I want to share this with any family, I can just click onto share, pop their email address in here, and then they'll be able to use it too. Okay, so that's really the end of the video for setting up this container forget. I think it's quite a useful container, but for anyone who wants to stay around for a little bit longer, I'm actually going to put this onto Tailscale Serve. So whenever you do anything to do with Tailscale and you're making any changes, it's always best to go to your app data and then the name of the container, and you should see a file here called Tailscale State. So I'm going to delete this because it will have pre-existing configuration in here. And also I'm now going to go back across to my Tailnet and I'm going to remove this off the Tailnet. So basically now I'm starting again from scratch. So now I'm going to click on to edit here, and we can see the host name's already filled out from before, that's fine. And we're still using this Tailscale exit node, absolutely fine. So now I'm going to put here, I'm going to enable Tailscale Serve. Now what I'm going to have to do now for this container, now most containers you won't have to do this with, but what I'm going to have to do here is I'm going to have to tell Tailscale to use a different port because 443 doesn't play nicely with forget because its Apache server is binding to it, and so Tailscale can't bind onto it as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this as equals 444. So now Tailscale should use this port, but we'll get a Tailscale serve name this time. So let's give that a try. Let's click apply here and go straight to the log. Okay, so obviously we need to authenticate this again. Right, that's done. So now we can see we're generating Tailscale certificates here, and it says this might take a little while. Okay, so there it is, it's up and running, and we can see here that this is going to be the actual address. And if you notice, there's a :444 at the end. So I should theoretically be able to hit this and go to that address. Okay, so here we are. We're straight into it with the actual domain name, and let's do a search again for cars. And everything's working fine. So we can actually use it through Tailscale Serve, but we just have to have this 444 at the end, which is not really a massive big deal. But the only reason I don't like it so much is because if we come here now and I click on Tailscale Web UI, when we do that, it doesn't actually put the port on the end. So we have to then manually put 444 ourselves, and then we get through. So I think that will probably be something I will put onto my Unraid Christmas wish list of improvements I'd like to see in Unraid, that if we use a different port for Tailscale Serve, it will adjust the web UI accordingly. But remember, when we're using Tailscale Serve, we can still just use the IP address as normal anyway, and still access it just over HTTP without any issue at all. Okay guys, so this really is the end of the video. It's New Year's Eve here now in the UK. And I hope wherever you are in the world, I hope you have an excellent New Year's Eve and is superb. 2025. Now, before I go, I just want to give a really big thank you to all of my patrons and supporters. Thank you so much, guys, for all of your support. It really means the world to me. In fact, without you guys, I really wouldn't be able to make these videos. Anyway, guys, it's time for me to go now, but whatever you're up to for the rest of the day, I hope it's good, and I'll catch you in the next video.